Hey everybody, Dave Brown here, along with my good friend Brian Emmenheiser, aka South Jersey Jason. And we have a special guest here. I am happy to introduce Mr. Bill Randolph, Jeff, aka Jeff from Friday the 13th, Part 2, has blessed us with his presence to spend some time and having a great conversation and just to get to know the guy. Now, I go back with Bill. I think I know Bill now, what, Brian, 3.5 years?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met thanks to Jesus. Stacy. I can't Pamela Voorhees. Thanks to Stacy and Chris, you were able to come to my world premiere of His Name Was Jason, along with Lauren and Ron. And that's how I got to meet you face to face for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, now that I've become, a senior citizen, I don't remember anything.
I'm 54 and I can't remember yesterday.
No, actually certainly it's interesting because I remember what I had for breakfast when I was in first grade, but I can't remember 2 hours ago.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we did get to see you a year and a half ago at camp. Me and Brian went up and met you at Camp Novi Bosco once again. I was dressed like Crazy Ralph.
Was it a year and a half ago or was it last year?
It's a year and a half now, right?
Well, no, it was like a year ago, June.
Oh, so yeah, I can't remember yesterday. There we go.
Yeah.
Bill, I was dressed as Crazy Ralph. We got to sit around you at the campfire and we got a nice photograph.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, of course, everybody remembers Crazy Ralph, and even though I've yet to be able to get the promo on my Facebook, I did watch it, and of course, who can forget? Doomed. You're all doomed.
I know. And it's so funny as me and Brian talk about the franchise and the original movie and Part 2, which are my two favorite of the franchise. I love how there's a 5-year gap between the first and the original, and Ralph was still dressed in the same damn clothes in Part 2.
And boy, did he stink.
Can they muster up enough of a budget to give him a new outfit? But I guess it wouldn't be iconic if they did that.
Well, and certainly the thing is that, with all these, kind of time questions,
right,
which none of which are necessarily successfully answered.
Right.
It's hard to know, because certainly I'm sure that, none of these guys, when they started this whole franchise, had any idea that 40, 50 years later anybody would care. Thank God that everybody does, but so I can't imagine that they were really thinking, well, 20 years from now on Facebook, people are going to pick this apart in terms of the timeline. I don't get it. Do you get it? Should we pay attention? Forget about it. Put Ralph in the center.
And us Friday the 13th fans, we're critical. Well, we dissect it.
Oh yeah.
And
the thing that's always so much fun with the conventions is that it seems like pretty much anybody who comes to the table knows more about the film than I do.
Yeah, you're like, and you're just in agreement with them. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I remember that. Wow. Yeah. Cool.
Pacify. So
what did I do yesterday?
What's that?
What did I do yesterday?
Exactly. I'm going to go into the first question. We obviously we know you from Friday the 13th Part 2, but what was pre-Bill like before Friday the 13th Part 2? What did you dabble in? What made you become the actor you are? How did the whole acting thing open up for you?
Well, it's interesting because Mrs. Froelich, who was my high school, I don't know, history, geography, I don't know what exactly, but they were having auditions for George M., the musical, that afternoon. And she was announcing, that they're having auditions, go and audition. Who knows? It might change your life. And that's exactly what happened. I went and I auditioned in sandals, doing a time step, learned a time step in sandals, and actually was cast in this musical. Unfortunately, my high school had a very good theater department where, they wouldn't just do the usual senior play and 3 performances. They did play after play after play, and always for 2 or 3 weekends at least. So, I got introduced very quickly, and of course, caught the bug and it never let me go. So, that's how I got started. I got started and mostly in theater, and I did, mostly theater in high school both my high school, and then I went to PCPA, which was a junior college in Santa Maria, California. And at the time, my high school director actually knew about auditions in San Francisco for SUNY Purchase, which I then traveled up to San Francisco and did an audition and got into the acting department at SUNY Purchase. And then after SUNY Purchase, moved into the city and got into a play called Gemini, which was on Broadway. And at what was then called the Little Theater and is now called the Helen Hayes. And actually the thing that was fun about it was that I did know people from Circle Rep, and Circle Rep is where Gemini originated, or was kind of begun. Right. And so I went and I auditioned for the part of Randy Hastings in Gemini. And they said to me at the audition, they said, listen, they're doing a production of this play, which was very unusual at the time because it was running on Broadway, at the Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. So they said, audition for that. So I auditioned for that. I got Randy Hastings in the role of Randy Hastings in the Arena Stage, at the Arena Stage. And everybody from the New York production kind of came and saw it. Most of the cast, and certainly Albert Inurado, who wrote the play, and the director, they all came down. So when Reed Birney, who was playing the role of Randy Hastings on Broadway, when he left the show, they called me up. In fact, they were having, disputes with Reed where he wanted to do other projects. And they called me up at like 6:30 and, some night and said, listen, we can't get a hold of Reed. Can you come do the show? So I jumped in the cab, went to the Helen Hayes, fully expecting to just walk onto a Broadway stage and take over, for Reed as Randy Hastings. And of course, by the time I got there, he had shown up. So sorry, your adrenaline is flying through the roof, but too bad, pal, go have a drink. But certainly when Reed did leave, they just called me up and said, listen, do you want to do this? And I said, yeah, right.
Right.
So, and from that, certainly, everybody in New York kind of knows it's a small community, relatively.
Right.
So I met, Meg Simon and Fran Cuman, who were the casting directors for Friday the 13th, Part 2. And, they called me in, and through them and through the auditions, I met Steve Miner, and we got along great, fortunately.
Right.
And actually, fortunately, because, and I've told this story a million times, but even so, the young, they were pairing us up with different Martas, and the young lady that was, and I don't know if she's pays attention to any of this anymore, but she was just bouncing off the wall. She was just so excited and just, I mean, she was just on another planet.
Mhm.
And so I turned to Steve and I said, you believe this? You know, what's going on here? Is this girl okay?
Mm.
And he and I shared a laugh with the situation at the time. And I think that at that moment, he decided that I could do Jeff. So that was cool.
So that was your first big breakthrough onto the big screen, was Friday the 13th Part 2 then?
Well, actually, I had done Dress to Kill before.
Okay. All right.
And that again was, a story where it was filmed at Sarah Lawrence. But anyway, Brian De Palma was an alumni. And for the auditions for this film called, it had various titles, but when we filmed it, it was called Gold Mine. I think it was eventually released as The First Time, directed by Charlie Loventhal. And Brian and Nancy were at the audition
Mm-hmm.
when I was auditioning for this other film. So, I got along very well with them. And it was one of these deals where when I think it's Lou DiGiamo was the casting director, he calls me up and says, listen, Brian wants you to do this film. Do you want to do it? I was like, what, are you kidding? Of course I do.
So that happened pretty much at the same time for you.
Yeah, it was a little earlier than, yeah, because both, I think Dress to Kill was 1980. I can't remember exactly when we filmed it, but yeah, we filmed Friday the 13th Part 2 in the fall of 1980. It didn't come out until 81,
Mhm.
but yeah, it was pretty close to the same time.
Well, that's cool. I didn't know. So you've been in New York ever since your big break for Gemini. Then, I mean, you grew up in Michigan, you ran to California, and then you came to New York, and you've been here ever since then.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I did do, I did this television series called Trauma Center,
Mhm.
I think in 84. And I was, out in Los Angeles for that. We filmed 13 episodes, but only 10 made it to the on the air. So I was out there, and certainly, I would go out there at any time to, to work.
Right.
But for the most part, yeah, I'm here in New York City.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
getting back to Dress to Kill, you shared a little bit of screen time with Angie Dickinson. Working
Oh,
with
actually, no, I never did meet Angie Dickinson.
no, I thought you
That
had the
was with
scene.
Nancy Allen.
I'm sorry, Nancy Allen. Sorry. What was it like working with Nancy Allen?
Oh, she was fantastic.
Yeah.
And it couldn't have been a better situation for me. My first, well, I guess because we had already filmed Goldmine, or uh, um, but the fact that I don't know, and actually at this point, I'm not sure whether she and Brian were already married. I think they were.
They were.
you know to to share, you know to spend an evening in New York City in a cab that's being dragged around the city by a film truck, because the camera was mounted in, I don't know, I don't think it was on the hood. I think it was actually in the truck.
Right.
But and spend, you know I forget how long, a whole day with Nancy. It was terrific.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I got much better treatment because I was filming with her. Not to say that anybody else got bad treatment,
Right.
not,
Right.
you know,
Did you come across Angie or Michael Caine during filming?
no, not at
No.
all. And I did this film several years later called Switching Channels
Oh
with
yeah.
Turner. And actually, Kathleen and I, we both did Gemini together. That's how I met her. She played,
Ah,
I played her brother. She was my sister in Gemini. So that I met her before Body Heat.
Okay. Wow.
And but so Kathleen and I did this movie Switching Channels, which Michael Caine was supposed to be in. He ended up being stuck wherever filming Jaws,
Hmm.
7,822. And we were filming in Toronto, Montreal, and Toronto, trying to do every scene we could, other than the scenes with Michael Caine with that character, hoping that he would finish up and be able to join us. And it finally got to the point was where we either have to recast this or, and I say we, yeah, right, where they had to recast it or the movie was going to shut down. And Burt Reynolds stepped in,
interesting.
yeah.
That would have a really different feel with him in that
Oh my
picture.
God, completely different.
Wow.
Completely different. Because I
Yeah.
mean, certainly, and granted, Burt was a huge star. He essentially would go from bit to bit. He could film from bit to bit. So instead of filming whole scenes, which Ted Kotcheff, who was the director on Dress to Kill, not Dress to Kill, on Switching Channels, he wanted it to be, where we would film entire scenes.
Mm,
And I don't think that Burt was capable of doing that.
gotcha.
So,
I love
so it,
I love Burt, but he changed he changed wheels through his career. I mean, one of my favorite all-time movies is Deliverance. And that was
yeah,
a
oh,
dramatic
without a doubt, that is just unreal. Yeah.
it,
And
it,
Ned Beatty
oh,
was in Switching Channels too.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And but later in his career, as he got older, he got a little bit more campy and funny and and corny. But like if you go back to his early career, the drama that he did and his dramatic roles were just phenomenal.
Getting back to Friday 13th Part 2, do you remember the first scene that you shot?
Yeah, the first scene that we shot actually was us in the truck coming down the road, next to the cornfields,
Mhm.
with the three of us in the front seat. That was the first thing that we shot was coming up that road, and certainly being the high budgeted film that it was, we probably, you would essentially get one take. They would check the gate, which means, you open up the lens to look and see if there's any dust. If there's no dust, we're moving on. So, so we had several shots. I'm sure that as soon as we finished those shots, I'm not sure whether we did a New Canaan right after that,
Right.
or whether we were actually. Yeah, we probably did New Canaan before. Asshole, this is my truck. We did that scene probably before we actually got to the camp and with Walt, Gurney, and Ralph and that whole thing, and going up the
Campground.
up that street,
Oh, yeah.
and asshole, this is my truck. That's an ad lib line. It got to the point where because Steve Miner was sitting right next to Cliff Clavin, who was driving the truck and was I think the stunt coordinator. And we were going along, and I'm banging on the door and whatever. And Steve, finally said to me, "Come on, come on, come on. Get angry. Get angry. I don't believe you. Get angry." And so when I said asshole, I was saying it to Steve.
Yeah. Don't get any more angrier than that.
It was like, okay, you want angry, asshole.
That's and cut, and we kept it.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is that, as soon as we're going up the road and check the gate. If it's good, we're moving on.
Right. That's awesome. So with the cast of part two, you have a pretty good kinship with Lauren Marie Taylor and Ron Milky. Has that always been there after the film, or do you guys reconnect with the help of Stacy after the years have passed? When she got you guys get going with the circuit of the cons and such.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Ron and Lauren Marie and I have become friends since the conventions. Thank God for the conventions. Because I probably would not be connected to pretty much anyone in the cast if it were not for the conventions. And, on set, essentially, the people that you're shooting with. But even though, everybody was there, I didn't really know Amy Steele. I didn't really know John Fury. And I didn't know, Russell Todd. Russell Todd and I have become very good friends since the conventions. And, it has been quite a bonus to be able
But
to
you guys,
my cast.
Bond on set, though. Didn't you guys have some drinking nights, I've heard, and you partied a little bit, or alcohol was served?
Not really. I mean, certainly the only time we really drank, because we were doing night shoots, was breakfast. Because we would all after we shot, we would all have breakfast in the the mess hall of the boys. I think it was like a Boy Scout camp around the lake from where we were shooting. And that became, people would bring, okay, this is the the sour mash from my hometown. So try this.
Oh God.
And see how stupid you get.
That's great. I would have loved being on set.
So in my other interviews, like I did with like CJ Graham, he didn't talk too much to the actors because he wanted to keep that the realism on scene. Now, through the years, there was always speculation who was Jason. Was it Steve? Was it Warrington? So whoever was playing Jason at the time, if you remember, did that actor interact with the cast, or did he stick to himself?
Well, certainly, Warrington is an event among himself. We didn't really have any interaction with him, and it's certainly because I was not on screen with him at all. Primarily the only thing that Warrington did was jumping through the window. So we didn't, which may have even been filmed after I was wrapped. So no, did not have much contact with him at all. And certainly Steve Dashowitz, who became Steve Dash. There were a lot of different people, depending on who was on set at the time, who would put on the jeans and the boots and be quote unquote Jason. So I did not have much interaction with him during the set at all. And again, thank goodness for the conventions, became much better friends with him, during the conventions.
Yeah. Now, to talk about your scene, your big sex scene, was that a long shoot? Did you guys have to reshoot constantly to get that just right? How long were you in that bed?
Oh, in my dreams, it was forever. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, the actual room that we were shooting in was not that big,
Right.
but it was a dolly shot from the foot of the bed to the front. And I can't imagine that we did more than 2 takes.
Okay.
Just because all they really cared was, number one, you were in focus, and number two, there was no dust on the lens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was a little shocking, when I saw it, because I saw it with a screening with my agent and with Megan Fran, the casting directors, in a screening room, like, I don't know, somewhere in New York City, probably somewhere around 50th Street and Broadway.
But
So when I saw it, and certainly very tame, but certainly what they did choose in terms of the spear underneath the bed with the blood was very effective.
Yep.
But I mean, and I forget that there's like a Blu-ray set where it actually has the original.
You should actually see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No pun taken.
Sticks in your brain. But I have a whole story about that too.
we like the grittiness.
Well, the thing is that I knew that Carl Fullerton, who was the special effects guy, our makeup guy, that he had the VHS with those cut scenes, or at least it was rumored that he did. So when I was doing an interview with Edwin Samuelson for the extras on the Blu-ray set, he asked about it, and so I said, well, I think it exists somewhere. It's been rumored that it exists, and I had a number for Carl Fullerton, his New Jersey number, which is where we did like he cast my back and different he would do the makeup stuff.
Right.
I called that number, which was probably at that point 40 years old.
It still worked.
Well, I got a voicemail.
Okay.
This is Carl Fullerton. Leave me a message. So I left him a message. I said, "Listen,
was it a voicemail? Was it a tape? Tape recording?"
It was like, hey, remember me from 7,822 years ago? This is Bill Randolph, and we would like to get a hold of this footage if it still exists. And he didn't call me back, but he did call because Peter Bracke was also involved. Peter Bracke, who did the book, and so he called. He either called Peter Bracke or he called Edwin and said, "Well, because he, I think now, may still be Denzel Washington's makeup man." And so he was flying to. Because I think he was living in North Carolina, somewhere in the South, and he was flying to Los Angeles, to work with Denzel. And so we tried to intercept him at JFK to get this VHS from him before he went to Los Angeles. And I mean, Edwin did. I wasn't a part of the abduction. And missed him at JFK, but basically said to Peter Bracke, he's on this flight, he's going to LAX, see if you can grab him at LAX. And Peter Bracke was able to grab him, and get the VHS that had the cut scenes. And
cool.
they ended up having to bake the a recovery place, somebody that actually does this. They actually had to bake the VHS to get a good image off of it. And they did. But no matter what anybody says, it wouldn't have happened without me.
That's right. And now maybe you can answer this age-old question. You know, it's 40 years. I don't care about Paul. I care about Muffin. What's your take on Muffin?
Yeah, Muffin. Yeah, if I were Muffin, I'd be talking to my agent. Because if Muffin is still around, if Stu is still around, if John is still around, okay. So, they've done how many Friday the 13th? So why aren't they reoccurring? Why don't they pop up again?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I just love after you guys discover Muffin, they shoot to the hot dogs, the grilling scene.
Oh, I know. Oh, yes.
So you talked about going to see you went to the premiere with your agent. Was it a packed audience?
Oh, actually, this was just a little screening room.
Oh, okay.
So it was, right, a smattering of people. But at one point, I did go to, a regular movie place, movie theater in New Jersey, and watched it incognito, and that was a blast.
Yeah, bet.
I love seeing the photos from the newspaper from the horror movies from like the 70s and 80s, like the line for Star Wars wrapped around the theaters. You don't see that anymore, and it's just so awesome. And I would have loved to have been alive then or older to be a part of that. Dave, what you're gonna go?
Yeah, no. So going back to set, I'm rewinding a little bit. Without mentioning any names, you seem like you had a great relationship with everybody on set. Was there any tensions at all, or issues on set with you guys? Egos, whatever?
Surprisingly, no. And again, I have no idea other than the fact that Fran Cumin and Meg Simon put together a good group of people, and Steve picked a good group of people. But part of the thing is that other than a couple of pranks that Stu and I would do, we did not have a whole hell of a lot of time offset.
Right.
When you were working, you were working. And, whenever we finished, as the sun's coming up or whatever, because we were at this Boy Scout camp, around this lake, at least, most of the people, certainly me from New York, I haven't owned a car in, 50 years. So, nobody had any transportation.
Right.
And I don't know if anybody else, actually went into town, I don't know. People might have been able to get into town, but town was not close.
Right. Well, that you guys were all young. I'm sure they kept you tight and watched too, just in case of that. And they probably figured, let's keep them working and exhaust the shit out of them so they get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
So was Lauren? She's every time I talk with her, she's always just energetic and just like she never like I never not talk to her where she's just like like she's just very like just AAA batteries, Duracell bunny. Was she like that during filming? Was she like energetic too?
Okay, here's the deal. When we were filming, Lauren and I have talked about this, but at the time, she was so perky and squeaky clean. I had no interest whatsoever to socialize with her, which I didn't really have the time to, or needed to, or
Right.
wanted to, because we didn't really have, other than the scene, around the table
Hmm.
where Marta comes and grabs me away, and I'm wrestling. It was like, but she's not someone that I would seek out on
That's
in our
so
free
funny.
time. And the thing that's great is that since the conventions, we've become very good friends.
Hmm.
Yeah. We see it. We see it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And we'll get to the conventions in a second. So let's go to, 1980s, Bill Randolph. You're a young actor and you've already done Dress to Kill, Friday the 13th. In your mind at that time, who did you want to be like your leading lady? Who did you want to work with?
Wow. That's a good question. Wow. I mean, certainly I had a great time with Nancy. And certainly for the most part, everybody just wants to work.
Hmm.
So, I didn't care. Team me up with anybody, but just team me up. Just get me on
Yeah.
set.
Is
Yeah.
there like any movies that you auditioned for that you didn't get and went on to be successful?
Well, that list probably goes on forever, but I'm trying to think of anything specifically in terms of what I really, yeah, Footloose.
Oh, really? Who'd you
Oh.
audition for? Or
Uh,
what role?
I auditioned for, Kevin Bacon's part.
That damn Kevin Bacon.
And here's an interesting, thing, because certainly I play as clone in part two.
Hmm.
There was a bowling alley on between 70 and 78th Street on Amsterdam Avenue. 10 lanes, a slice out of the Midwest. A bunch of us, kind of, and Kevin Bacon being one of them. Although I don't know, like Jennifer Grey, a lot of us up and coming actors and actresses at the time, we'd go bowling.
Hmm.
So I knew them, and in fact, I told Kevin that I was going to play his clone in part two. He could have cared less.
Oh yeah. I think he's embraced it a little bit more with age, but I know
Oh, I know.
previous.
I saw this great commercial for one of the new streaming services where he's
Yeah,
sitting around the table
the
as,
arrow.
yeah, with the arrow, yeah, through his chest. I mean,
Hmm.
come on.
Yeah.
Well, even on TikTok, he was sleeping and his wife and his kids like put an arrow on his chest and he woke up with it. So
Wow.
eventually he might come around. You never know, and we might see him at a convention. Maybe he'll be at the 45th anniversary convention next
Oh,
year.
that would be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ooh.
I mean, I think in interviews he said it was a job to pay the bills. I needed to
Oh,
pay my
absolutely.
rent, you know.
And pretty much, that's what all of us felt.
Yeah.
Nobody at the time, like I said to my agent after the screening, I said, well, that's not going to hurt me.
Right.
Never thinking that, 7,000 years later, we'd still be talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, and of course, at the time, I thought my career would never end.
That's the perfect opening for my next question. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, sometime in the '90s, you kind of walked away from acting to pursue graphic designing, correct?
Well, the story is that this just confirms I'm old as dirt. At age 50, in 1999 or so, my wife and I decided to have a family.
Gotcha.
So in 2000, huh?
That's my story too. I have an 8-year-old and I'm 54 now. So
Wow. So you got started a little earlier than I did.
a little earlier.
But yeah, my son is now 21, and essentially, because I'd always, done graphics and posters and designed different stuff and everything, just, through my life. And, I didn't have health insurance, my work with SAG was not consistent enough that I had continuous health insurance. So I went and worked at the Daily News for 20 years so that I could have health insurance to raise my son.
Yeah. You had to grow up.
I know. What a pain in the butt.
And that sucks.
Oh, God, are you kidding me? And I remind him every single day.
Oh, God, no, you don't do that.
No, of course.
When did you show him Friday the 13th Part 2?
Oh, yeah. And the thing that always shocks me is that at the most, arbitrary times, there was a moment when we were in, one of the offices at, one of the schools that he went to. And he says to the secretary, have you ever seen Friday the 13th Part 2? And she goes, yeah. Well, my dad was in that. And she goes, no. And then I say, yeah, I played Jeff. And she goes, and it's like, I could have cared less whether she remembered anything at all. The fact that he brought it up was like, oh, okay.
That's cool. Now, is he acting or what's he doing?
He actually is going to the Fashion Institute of Technology, designing, men's clothing. And actually he's been drawing since, he could hold a pencil in his hand. So it's pretty cool. His designs are really fun.
That's funny because I was in that industry 20 some odd years. I did the windows for Bloomingdale's and Saks Fifth Avenue in New York City.
Wow.
Yeah. I was a productionist and I did that. And then I'm on the other side now. I live in Brooklyn, but I work for a company that builds large visual display pieces. I'm on the other side. So yeah, that's cool. He's in that. So I the fashion part of it, I was in that part of it as well. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
So can I have him contact you to pick your brain?
Yeah. I'm still very tight with a lot of the I don't know if you know the pave people. They do a lot of based on visual display, visual merchandising. I mean, if he's going for fashion, that's something else.
Yeah.
But if he needs to make some ends meet, visual display is the way to go. They always need visual display people in the city, whether it be Bloomies, Saks, Macy's. It's good, consistent money, but he can still do the fashion part of it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'll definitely.
I'm picking you up and Ron to take you to the convention in Blairstown.
Oh, okay. All right.
And, we'll touch base about that later, about getting your phone. Because I'm in Brooklyn and I'll pick you guys up on the way, but we could talk more about that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So let's get back to the conventions. How did Stacy make contact with? Was Stacy your original booking agent for conventions?
No.
Oh, okay.
I actually met Chris and Stacy because they were fans.
Okay.
And I was working with someone else at the time. I will not mention.
Yeah, obviously.
Names.
So how did they contact you?
I was not happy with it. I forget. I was at some convention somewhere, and Chris and Stacy were there, and I was not happy at all, just in terms of what was going on. And Steve was there actually too, Steve Dash. And I don't know exactly how the conversation got started, but essentially I said, I was just probably at my table complaining. And they said, well, we're thinking of doing this. Would you be interested? And I said, you kidding? Sure. Yeah. So then I jumped ship and joined them. And, we've been
awesome. 1 second, you continue talking. I got to plug in my computer.
Running out of battery.
It happens.
I know.
So, Bill, did you teach some acting for a while? Were you doing classes?
Well, actually, my wife, Therese Capicelli, she was a principal dancer with the Martha Graham Dance Company for 26 years, and then became co-artistic director with Chris Dakin. She teaches the Graham technique at Juilliard.
Ah, nice, nice.
But I do know, I've known people from Martha Graham, for 20 years.
Right, right,
And
right.
Virginie Massene, who actually is the Graham 2 director. Graham has a school, and
Right.
they do have classes. And so at one point, I think it was during COVID, at one point, there was a guy that was teaching acting for dancers, because certainly the Graham repertoire requires, you have to be an actor. You have to be an actor to be able to do Graham, because they're all it's the ballets are very dramatic, and they're based on Greek characters and modern characters and whatever. So you can't just get up and do the choreography. You have to know how to act.
Right, right,
So
right.
they asked me if I would take over, because apparently some guy on Zoom from Italy was teaching the course and dropped out.
Gotcha.
And so they asked me, they said, "Do you want to take over?" And I said, "Sure." And so the first year I taught on Zoom. And then ever since, during the spring, I do about 15 weeks of teaching
Still do it.
dancers,
Oh, that's
how to act.
because I know Ron still dabbled. I think he's still teaching some acting classes as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In fact, I did a film, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago. And of course, I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, which we did primarily with his acting class. And I think that that's part of the appeal that Ron has in terms of his class, that he usually does some kind of a film with them,
Right.
before.
He recently produced, I think he did a black and white. Because I still communicate via email, because he was in my film. His name was Jason. And he did something not too long ago, a black and white horror-esque film. So he's still active in that sense.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
Very, even at his age, he's still very hungry for it, which is fantastic.
And see if you can actually get him to tell you his real age.
Yeah, I can't figure it out, because when
I know, yeah. It's like he won't tell me either.
I don't know if he's getting younger or if he's getting older,
It's like I said, you should celebrate it. No. People won't catch me in anything if they.
Do you have an approach for acting when you were actively doing it? I mean, I asked this with Lauren because she was in I don't know if you were familiar with her new film, In a Violent Nature.
Yeah, I haven't been able to actually find that anywhere. I'll have to get her to give me some kind of a link.
I think it's on Shudder if you subscribe to it.
It's available in October. You can get it on Blu-ray. They are going to release.
Okay.
She's got the most dialogue in the movie. I mean, the concept of the movie is through the eyes of the killer, which has never really been done. And it's set in the woods, but we had her on and we interviewed her about her new role for this. And I was curious on the way she approached acting, if she ever dabbled in method acting and this and that. Without going into her full story, I was wondering how you ever approached acting. What were your styles and techniques when you were doing your stuff?
I am a member of the Actors Studio, which I have been since 1999. In terms of, with my feeling is that essentially you connect with your character in some way that has to do with you.
Personally, yes.
the thing that is most important, the imagination will take you wherever you want to go.
Right.
You just have to trust your director and yourself and show up.
Yeah.
Because certainly there are very few people that can truly put on, I don't know, other clothing or whatever you want to call it, in terms of acting and whatever. But even so, even if Meryl Streep, my God, she could play a piece of toast and it would be interesting. But even when she's playing a piece of toast, it's coming from her.
Yeah. She makes it her own. Make it your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I forget which film it was where she was playing the president, and there's this thing where they had a bunch of improvs, where she had to improv like she was on the phone to somebody when the scene began, and the thing is that every single conversation she has in the outtakes, and I'm not sure whether they saved them or not, is different, completely different.
Yeah.
But completely believable in terms of the fact it's her imagination and her reality that she is making available. And if you have a good cinematographer and a good director that knows to be able to trust that, it's golden.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it takes the perfect storm, it's just having that chemistry with everybody on set, with your director and your cinematographer, like you said, and hopefully you have that. So when you played Jeff, were you in character, or was Jeff you?
Yeah, for the most part, Jeff was me.
Yeah, I kind of feel that as I've gotten to know you. I feel you are Jeff. It's really
yeah.
You were just being natural, which comes off organic, and that's what you want.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's interesting too, because I forget who I had a conversation with recently. Actually, I'm working with Ricardo Velez from the Actors Studio, and he and I have known each other for 50 years since Purchase. But I certainly early in my career, I was much more performance oriented.
Yeah. Okay.
In the sense that I would, set a performance and then just redo it. And certainly if I was doing theater every night kind of thing. And the thing that I've discovered, since working at the Actors Studio, and I have no idea, in terms of what's method, what's not.
Right.
But the exciting is that it's different every time, because your imagination and your thoughts are different every time, even though you're saying the same dialogue
based on the character, and that's what good screenwriters like. The foundation is there, and I'm writing again, and I'm looking to do another story, which is a very dark, dramatic story. And as I'm writing these characters, and I have people in mind for these roles, I want them to follow it, not to the T, but also make it your own.
Yeah.
But, and I was wondering, I always like to know, when talking to actors, how they feel when it comes to styles and techniques, what stands out to them personally.
Yeah, we got this guy 8 years ago. His name is Gordo. And the joke being that he's a small dog.
As a pun.
But
what kind of dog is he?
He's a Shih Tzu Havanese mix.
Oh, I have a Shih Tzu.
Nice.
And the thing that we've realized, because he is a rescue, that he's got some quirks, which may have been, DNA'd into him as when he was a rescue, that can be a little tough sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
You never know when you're getting a mutt what you're getting.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I know a lot of dogs get freaked out by thunder and lightning and
Fireworks.
but he also kind of goes berserk when it's just raining and he can hear the rain. He's perfectly fine if he's in the rain itself outside. But inside the apartment, if he hears the pitter patter on the windows,
Oh, that's
it
crazy.
drives him insane.
Yeah. Maybe it's he's just getting flashbacks from when he was at the kennel in the rain on those lonely nights, you know?
I guess so.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so the Friday 13 franchise overall is 44 years, still going strong. How does it feel to have a small part of that?
Oh, you kidding? It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I couldn't have wished for anything better.
Mhm.
And not only that, but I enjoyed the shoot. I had a good time. Um, since the conventions, have been able to reconnect with, these people that I like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, so it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Awesome.
Do you have any
Yeah.
memorable moments from the convention, like a fan interaction?
Yeah, actually, it's funny, because you have these big banners that are, over your table,
Mhm.
that in large pictures and letters say exactly who you are. And I had this one woman. She comes up and she's looking at the, because I have a lot of shots from Friday
Mhm.
the 13th, and actually one shot from Dress to Kill and whatever. But she's looking at the pictures. She's looking at me. She's looking at the banner. She's looking at the pictures. And I finally said to her, because it was like she couldn't make the connection from who I was and the people in the pictures. So I said to her, I said, who is that guy? She like looked at me, totally confused. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And walked away.
I thought you were going to say, "Hey, asshole."
Yeah, really, really.
Yeah, you should have said that.
So,
Hey, asshole, what can I sign for you?
so Dave and I we posed this question to Lauren. You were at Camp Novi Bosco last year,
Mhm.
and it was, it's a surreal experience for a fan going to a shooting location and meeting the actors of the film. It's a shame the location of part two is still not there, because you could
Yeah.
be at your own camp and like having like your own
Yeah.
reunion. Like, just imagine what could have been.
Yeah. And yeah, because I mean, certainly the people who owned the actual camp that we worked at eventually tore it down and built their own home and have not been generous in any way, shape, or form, which I can understand. It's like, hey, we're getting a real estate in a home.
Mhm.
We don't want a bunch of, jamooks coming up and
Yeah. Treading through.
bothering us.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is too bad. And I don't know. I mean, because I haven't been up in that area at all. Does the Boy Scout camp still exist? I would
I don't think
imagine.
anything's there. Like the home that Alice lived in the beginning, that was torn
Oh yeah, yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah. But
Um,
what town was that in? Because that was
Kent,
not
Kent,
any.
I think, Kent, Connecticut, I believe.
Yeah. I think they actually turned into a halfway house. And then after
Yeah,
that, yeah,
Yeah,
like,
and then they
well,
tore
that's
it down.
appropriate.
Yeah, I think the bar burned down.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely. The bar did
yeah.
burn down. Ooh,
So
I got a good story about that too.
okay.
Certainly it took me forever to convince Steve Miner that I should run through the scene.
Hmm.
And because he just didn't want to do it, but I finally talked him into it. And unless I point it out, nobody knows that that's me.
Yeah.
But the thing that was fun was that who was it? Because there was a foosball table there,
Hmm.
And I don't know whether I was playing on my own or whether I had a partner because, my ego being so big, I don't remember anybody but myself. You know how you put down a quarter or 50 cents or whatever it is, to play the winner?
Mm-hmm.
That whole night that we shot in that bar, and it was nowhere near where they were actually filming, nobody got me off the table.
Nice.
That's funny. So you're a foosball expert, huh?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I just happened to be good that night.
So
the same thing with the harmonica.
Do you actually play, or you were just
actually play that harmonica. The first and last time I have ever played a harmonica in my entire life.
It's funny about that bar scene. There's only one beer drank during that whole scene amongst every cast member, and I guess
Stu.
It was Stu, but other people were drinking. You could see the bottles, but I guess it was the only company they could get to sponsor, and that was Molson.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and actually, not a bad beer. Yeah.
No, not a bad beer at all. And yeah.
So speaking of conventions, you're coming to a meet and greet at the Blairstown Diner in a couple of weeks.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. You've been there. I believe you were there a couple of years ago, correct?
Yeah.
Back in 2022. Was that your first time, like going to camp? Was that like your first time going to Blairstown for like camp? And
that was my first time at the diner.
Okay. Did you eat food? Did you have any food at the diner at all?
I'm sure I did, because my MO, which may be very telling, every time I go to any diner, I get the same thing.
What's your choice?
Scrambled eggs, sausage, rye toast.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I'm sure that's what I had at the Blairstown Diner when I went there.
Well, Brian and myself, we're Jersey boys. I reside in Brooklyn now, but we grew up doing the diner thing, and I'm sure it's in our DNA. We have to hit a diner, whether it be North Jersey, South Jersey. It's our thing.
I know, absolutely. And thank God that there are still diners in New York City.
Yeah,
because I can't imagine. I don't know. Can't imagine going to any town and not hitting the local diner. The local diner is the soul of the city.
Yeah. I actually was at the diner a couple of weeks ago, and I like you, I pretty much usually get the same thing when I go, but I'm trying to expand, try different things on the menu, and
which may be dangerous.
Yeah, well, they shared a pork roll sandwich. Like, I gotta try that because I love a good pork roll sandwich, and it was good. Although up in North Jersey they call it Taylor ham. So, but we're South Jersey.
Taylor ham.
It's a brand name. Yeah, Taylor.
But
so
South
they're
actually call it pork roll sandwich.
Yeah.
It's
Jersey's version of Canadian bacon, really. It's got a different flavor, but it's a Jersey staple. That and scrapple, which I think is Pennsylvania done. I love.
Well, maybe next time, when on Friday the 13th in September at the Blairstown Diner, this time I will get instead of sausage, I will do a small substitution.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they have a Friday 13th inspired menu that they do that day. So
they have a Ron Milky omelet, don't they?
Wow.
Do they? I don't know. I'm surprised they don't have a South Jersey Jason something.
No, I think it was either Ron Milky or the Dwarf or something.
I think it's the Dwarf, yeah. And then the Blairstown Inn across the street does the Kevin Bacon Burger. They put a knife through it. But and I had told you, sometime throughout the day, maybe after the meet and greet, I'll take you to that little ice cream parlor on Main Street right there.
Yeah,
absolutely. So they got some really the parlor that we go to, Dave.
Yeah. They do one. What is that chocolate one with the cordial cherries? Like the Grant. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's really, really good. All homemade. So good.
Wow.
So, yeah, we're excited to have you at the diner. Last year, it was their busiest Friday since they took over in 2019.
Uh-huh.
The line to get into the diner wrapped around the building, and it was a 90-minute wait.
Wow.
So, yeah, so we're getting some buzz ever since I announced you and Ron. There's been a lot more buzz on it, so which is great. So it's going
Well,
to be
I actually haven't seen Ron in a while. So yeah, I look forward to spending time with him. He's an interesting character.
He is.
So,
He's such a nice guy. He's got my photo. Well, so he says on his fridge.
Yeah, well, so who's picking up? You're picking him up?
I'm picking you up, Bill. Yeah.
So what you need to do is you need to say, Ron, I'll come to your apartment and pick you up, and then go look at the fridge and see whether he's lying or not.
Take a screenshot when he's not looking.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dave, do you have any final questions for
I
Bill?
don't. It was like I said. I don't know if it's a New Yorker, fellow New Yorker thing, but and with Lauren as well. It's always organic and great talking with these guys. I mean, you're like I told you. Part two in order. Part two is my favorite next to the original film. Everything after that, but yeah, part two lays close to my heart. And when I get to talk with these guys, especially Bill and Ron and Lauren, I'm tickled pink, as they say.
Yeah, I can tell by your background.
Yeah, that's our logo, the third channel.
Wow.
Oh,
So-
we do have one question.
Yeah.
So as a film watcher, not a filmmaker, an actor, horror movies, do you watch the genre? And if so, do you have a favorite one growing up?
I didn't really watch any of this, although of course, Jamie Lee Curtis,
Halloween.
yeah, Halloween, Friday the 13th would not exist if Halloween hadn't been so successful. And it's interesting because it seems like there's been a real resurgence in horror.
Oh yeah.
Even in the new streaming stuff, where there are some really new, scary stuff.
Yeah.
It is not my first choice in terms of what I want to stream, but Tony Perkins. It's hard to get away from a classic, like that. I can't even remember the name of the film. What's the name of the film that Tony Perkins?
Psycho.
Psycho.
Yeah,
I mean,
one of my favorites.
that shower scene is just it's brilliant. And actually, Tony Perkins did Equus on Broadway, and I was able to sit on stage and watch him talk about, just kind of, people being themselves. Certainly Tony Perkins has a few little habits that he does, all the time. Everything he does.
Right.
He's got a few, on stage for Equus, he was doing some of the same stuff, and it was so comforting.
Yeah. Speaking of Tony Perkins, his son actually directed Longlegs with Nicolas Cage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which was a fantastic horror movie. Very dark.
Would you say it's more of a thriller? I would say
yeah. It's not bloody and gory. It's kind of like a Silence of the Lambs type of feel,
That's coming on streaming soon. You should watch that, Bill. Nicolas Cage is just so creepy in that film.
Unrecognizable makeup. Yeah.
Certainly Kathleen and I have been friends forever. And when she was doing Peggy Sue Got Married, she was so pissed off at Nicolas Cage for doing whatever accent he decided to do in Peggy Sue. But certainly I have come to respect him. He is a very good actor.
He is.
Yeah. I think you just have to adapt to his personality on set, from what I'm told. You know,
okay, yeah.
That's what I've heard through the grapevine over the years. When you're working with him, it's his show. When he's on camera, you know.
So he's not generous in that way.
Well, he's may have humbled over the years because of his situations financially. You know, he had a lot of tax issues, and I think he's humbled. He's humbled. You have to. You know, you have to. So yeah, that's all I got, Brian.
Yeah, that's all I have. It was a great conversation. You know, like I like interviews like this. It's just three guys kind of shooting the shit, you know, virtually, but it was a great conversation.
If it was a little later, Bill, I would have been drinking an old fashioned with you.
But
But 12 noon, I can't handle it.
Oh, yeah. It's a little early.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I can't wait until
we
Friday
got like
13th
3
September
weeks.
at Blairstown. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. And we got a surprise for the couples that are getting remarried. We're gonna have Bill stepping in as a witness, which would be great. So, and they don't know that yet, and they probably may not.
Well, I guess they do now.
Well, I'm not going to say anything online until the day of, and it'll just make it that much more memorable.
Now, has Ron agreed to?
I haven't spoken to Ron. I'm going to call Stacy to see if she has talked to him, and then relay message. I'm sure she has. So I talked to her Friday, but it was for something else.
Right.
But I'm sure, he wouldn't mind, especially if he's bringing Officer Dorf with him. I'm not sure if he's going to.
He doesn't go to any of these things without the helmet.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh, bless him. I remember.
I'm dressing up as Freddy Krueger this time around, but I should probably bring Crazy Ralph. Maybe I'll flip it up.
Yeah, I think that would be great for the wedding ceremony to have the town drunk.
Certainly Walt Gorney was such a complete professional and gentleman while we were filming.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, he just was.
He had a massive background of theater too, right? He was in a theater. Yeah. Yeah, that's always different when you got all these guys that have theater experience that come into the mainstream. I think the sense of professionalism is a little bit more, perfect,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, certainly the thing is that you got to be prepared. You got to be able to when you step on when it says roll. You got to be there. You got to be ready.
Right.
You can't fumble around.
I think that was the same with Betsy Palmer. When
absolutely.
I remember some of the interviews she was having that, she was giving theater slaps to Adrian King, which are real slaps. And, Adrian was like, "What, Sean, what is she doing? She's hitting me." Sean Cunningham said, "Betsy, you need to calm down on the slapping." He's like, "Well, that's what we do."
Yeah. I actually was at a table right next to her in one of the conventions, and that was such a joy. She was just tremendous.
You ever see her in that movie with Jackie Gleason? What was that movie? She had a major role with Jackie Gleason in the 50s. Betsy Palmer. I can't think of the movie, but it's a great film. It's a great film.
And certainly, Jackie Gleason was a tremendous actor.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can look that up right now real quick before we get off.
Yeah, wasn't he in The Hustler, like the original Hustler?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, him and Paul Newman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he gave Paul Newman a run for his money. Let me tell you.
Yeah. I just always attribute him to the Honeymooners, because
absolutely, yeah.
Other than Honeymooners, I've only seen the only way of his movies was the one with Tom Hanks where they play father and son.
Yeah.
That was hard to watch at times. Yeah.
And speaking of the Honeymooners, I was very fortunate to meet Crispin Glover at the Actors Studio.
Ooh, how was that?
So I asked him, I said, because one of my favorite, and actually, I imitate him all the time. He has that scene with Michael J. Fox, and he's sitting watching the TV, going, and he's laughing at the honeymooners.
Yeah.
And so I said to him, I said, listen, I've copied that laugh, ever since that movie. And he said, yeah, well, I was looking at nothing. So they didn't have anything on screen when I
wow.
Yeah.
So when I asked him about the honeymooners, it was like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Was he eccentric in person?
Well, it's not like we had a long enough conversation to really
get to know him. Yeah.
Get any kind of essence from him, but he certainly, was very generous in the conversation. So, and it's got to be tough. And I'm sure that this is true with a lot of, celebrities, is that, people don't see a human being.
Yeah.
They see a character, whichever character they remember the best. And, so in some ways, you become very protective.
Yeah. There's a hidden gem. He did a remake of Willard.
That was good. Yeah.
Where he plays Willard. You remember that movie, don't you?
Yeah, the Rats.
Absolutely.
Yeah. His remake was, I think, early 2000s when that came out.
That suit him very well. He did a
he was also good in Charlie's Angel as like the hitman who would always sniff the hair before he kills them. Yeah, I obviously I always when I think of Crispin Glover, it's either Back to the Future or Friday the 13th, and the David Letterman interview he did where he got banned from Letterman. But
Letterman. Well, I've never met him, but certainly,
never a fan. I got to be honest. There was a diehard following of him in the 90s and the 2000s. I was never a fan of Letterman. I don't find this guy funny at all or a great interviewer, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, in some way, no, I shouldn't even say this, but in some ways he was pretty selfish.
Yeah. A little
when you mentioned Crispin in Back to the Future, I saw the Broadway play back in December. Yeah. And the actor who played George McFly was fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, he was really good. Wow. I think he's now completed his run, but he did the laugh and everything, like to a T. It was really good. Wow. If you haven't seen that play, you should go definitely see it.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
I went to see, actually, and this is completely different, but I went to see, Tommy when it was on Broadway before it closed. Completely, totally skeptical, because I have such a memory of the album.
Yeah.
That I thought, oh, come on, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And it did open up the album in a way that surprised.
Let me ask you, did they have to be sensitive with, like, did they use the terminally that deaf, dumb, and blind sure can play a mean pinball? Did they,
They didn't couch anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's history.
And in fact, in terms of that, because, it's pretty much word for word. They didn't add anything. They didn't, subtract anything. And it is much more of a complete story than I ever remembered.
Right.
And, everybody, they had a mother, a father, an Uncle Ernie. They had, all the different characters and stuff like that. I thought it was a brilliant job of realizing my imagination of the music.
I wish I would have seen it.
Yeah. I don't know why it closed, or I think it's closed. Yeah.
But may have moved to London. I know they move the shows once in a while, so
for the rest we got to go to JFK and fly to London to see it. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah, we are in New York. We should have everything here for a longer time.
Really, I mean, come on. Where do you think we live? God damn it!
I know. We're the epicenter. You know?
That's right, of the universe.
I personally feel every great actor comes from New York City. None of those California people. I really feel like if you want a person with attitude and great acting skills, I think most of your good ones come from New York. You know.
Yeah.
Or at least East Coast. At least East Coast.
You know, you got to inform the casting directors in Los Angeles. They have to keep on coming to New York to get decent people.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Bill, we thank you for coming on. We'll let you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
On Friday the 13th, Brian, you want to take us out?
Yeah, so again, we're going to thank Bill Randolph. It was a great time talking with him. Obviously, if you're living under a rock and don't know who Bill Randolph is, go watch Friday 13th Part 2. Probably one of the most iconic death scenes in all the franchises. And he will be at the Blairstown Diner on Friday 13th in September from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m., along with Ari Lehman and Ron Milkey. And until next time, we'll see you later.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.